All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into just one single piece of data, but trust me, it tells this incredible hidden story about mental health, about community, and about these really deep cultural rhythms that shape how we take care of ourselves. Okay, so let's jump right in. What are we looking at here? It's just a number, right? Positive 0.32. But what if I told you this single statistic unlocks this really profound insight into how a community, especially a displaced one, finds its footing? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What can one little number really tell us about something as complex as our mental well-being? So here's what's behind that number. It's something called a Pearson correlation, which is just a fancy way of saying it measures a relationship between two things. And in this case, wow, it uncovers a really specific and powerful connection. It shows that for non-Dutch speakers living in the Netherlands, the more they connect with what we're going to call tribal values, the more likely they are to turn to physical activity to support their mental health. It's a pretty big deal. Okay, so what's really going on here? Because this isn't just some random preference, right? It's not like they just happen to like jogging more. To really get to the bottom of this, we need to pull out a different lens. We're going to look at this through a model called spiral dynamics, and specifically, we're going to focus on what it calls the purple value system.
Now, this purple vMEME, or you can just think of it as a value system, is often seen as the oldest social stage of human consciousness. And it's super important to get this right. This is not about being primitive or less developed, not at all. It's about what a culture prioritizes. And for a purple worldview, everything, safety, identity, your sense of meaning, it all comes from the tribe, from shared rituals, from that deep connection to your heritage and your ancestors.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. For purple vMEME, movement isn't a solitary exercise, it's embodied belonging. Think about that. We're not talking about hitting the gym to get a six-pack or tracking your steps on an app. No way. This is about reconnecting with your people, your tribe, through shared rhythmic action. It's literally finding your sense of belonging in motion. And you can see this playing out all over the place in the real world. In the Netherlands, where this data actually comes from, you see immigrant and expat communities creating these anchors of belonging. It could be a rugby club that's as much about the socializing as it is the sport, or a running group for internationals that becomes their social bedrock. Or maybe it's a traditional dance gathering. The theme is always the same, doing something physical, together, in rhythm. That's what creates that feeling of home when you're far away from it. But just when we think we have it figured out, the story takes a turn. It gets a lot more complex, because a really critical question starts to pop up. Is this choice, this turn towards group movement, is it this beautiful expression of ancient wisdom? Or is it something else? Is it a choice that's made freely, out of preference? Or is it a choice made because there are no other options? So you've got these two ways of looking at the exact same choice. On one hand, yeah, it could absolutely be a cultural preference. Movement is a universal language, right? It's a way to connect when you don't speak the local language, a way to find some stability and ritual in a brand new place. But then there's the other side, the systemic constraint. And this side asks a much more uncomfortable question. What if this isn't a free choice at all? And this is where we have to face a pretty tough possibility. Look, if you don't speak the language, getting therapy is almost impossible. If you're struggling to make ends meet, you're probably not going to be able to afford it. But getting together with people for a run or a game, that's often free, and you don't need a translator. So this pattern we're observing, it might not be a sign of cultural strength at all. It might actually be a symptom of a healthcare system that's failing some of its most vulnerable people. So why are we spending all this time on this distinction? Does it really matter if it's preference or constraint? Oh yeah, it matters a ton. Because getting the why right isn't just some academic debate. It has huge real-world consequences, especially when you're trying to predict how people are going to act. Okay, to really see what I'm talking about, let's run a little thought experiment. Imagine you're a manager and you have to make a really tough call. You have to put your team on unpaid leave. Now, you'd think the reaction would be universal, right? Everyone's going to be angry. They're losing money. Simple. Well, not so fast, because as this data shows, that exact same action, sending people home without pay, can either bring your team closer together or completely tear it apart. It all depends on their underlying values. For a team with that purple tribal worldview we talked about, it's seen as a shared sacrifice. We're all in this together. It can actually boost morale. But for a team driven by orange, by individual achievement, it's a personal setback. It's a loss. It's inefficient. You can bet they're already polishing their resumes. And that is the whole point. A model that understands that purple correlation can predict something that seems totally crazy, that a so-called punishment might actually make your team stronger. Knowing that deep cultural wiring, that hidden code, lets you see these completely counterintuitive outcomes before they happen. If you miss that, you could make a decision that just blows up in your face.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit, because this whole principle isn't just about the purple value system. When you look at the whole picture, you start to see that every single cultural worldview has its own unique and often conflicting strategy for what it means to be well.
Take that orange achievement-focused worldview, for example. Now, just like purple, it has a positive link to physical activity, but for a totally different reason. For orange, your well-being is another performance metric you have to optimize. It's all about the ROI, the return on investment. How many steps did I take? How many calories did I burn? It's all measurable. Meanwhile, you've got the green worldview, which is all about community and harmony, and it shows the strongest link to simply connecting with other people. And then it gets even more interesting, because some worldviews actively reject these other approaches. You have the holistic turquoise worldview, which loves mindfulness but actually has a negative correlation with physical activity. For them, well-being isn't about the body, it's about aligning your consciousness. Then there's the blue, order-driven mindset. It actually shows a negative link with connecting with others. Why? Because for that worldview, all that messy, unstructured emotional sharing can feel like a threat to duty, to stability, to the proper way of doing things. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's pretty simple, really. Any attempt to create a universal, one-size-fits-all solution for mental health it's going to fail, is doomed from the start. What one person finds deeply healing, another person might find totally pointless, or maybe even harmful. Real effective wellness strategies have to take into account both our deep cultural programming and the actual circumstances of our lives. And that leaves us with one last, and I think pretty challenging question to chew on. The next time you see a statistic, a news report, anything about how a group of people behaves, I want you to ask yourself this. Am I seeing a beautiful expression of that culture's free choice, or am I just seeing the only choice that they have left?